Hey guys, Dr. Ben Weitz here with the Rational Wellness Podcast. Each week I'll be bringing you the latest cutting edge information about health and nutrition. In this media-driven world, it's easy to be confused about what's true and what's not. I'll cut through the conflicting headlines to bring you clarity to help you optimize your health and maximize your life. Subscribe to the Rational Wellness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. Let's get started on your path to better health.
Hope was so enticing back in the day. This crazy new thing just finding its way in me on.
Hi, this is Dr. Ben Weitz, and we're here for another episode of the Rational Wellness Podcast. I'm so glad that you could join us, and we have an interesting topic today. We're going to talk about reflux, otherwise known as gastroesophageal reflux disorder, abbreviated GERD or GERD. And this is actually a fairly common condition in our society, and it affects up to 60% of Americans. And 60% of Americans will experience at least one episode on a yearly basis. 20 to 30% of Americans will experience at least one symptom of GERD on a weekly basis. And the incidence of GERD has been going up, and it's also tied closely with obesity. The symptoms of GERD include a burning sensation in your chest or throat, chest pain, otherwise known as heartburn, difficulty swallowing, dry cough, hoarseness, regurgitation of food or sour liquid, commonly thought of as acid reflux. Patients frequently get these symptoms more commonly at night. GERD is generally believed to be related to failure of the lower esophageal sphincter. That's the sphincter between the esophagus or the throat and the stomach. And if that sphincter becomes less, not working optimally, then it makes it easier for the acid contents of the stomach to come back up into the esophagus. So if either the enzymes or the hydrochloric acid from the stomach or the bile come back up into the esophagus, it can then lead to these symptoms. It could irritate and inflame the lining of the esophagus. It could also lead over a long period of time to erosion of the teeth and eventually to esophageal cancer. GERD is generally treated by the medical community with medications that are blocking the acid, the stomach acid. And these are commonly known as proton pump inhibitors or H2 blockers. An example of proton pump inhibitors that's very common is Prilosec. And however, functional medicine doctors often look at this type of condition in a different way. And so I'm so happy that Dr. Jeanette Ryan is here to join us today. And Dr. Jeanette Ryan is a chiropractic physician and a certified functional medicine practitioner from the Institute of Functional Medicine.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm so glad that you took time to join us. And Jeanette, I know that treating GERD or reflux is something that you see commonly in your practice.
A
Is
lot.
that right?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, I know they're saying up to 60%, but it seems like new patients coming in, probably more like 80%, I find,
Wow.
have some symptom of gastroesophageal reflux or, just poorly functioning stomach. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when these patients present to you, how do you work them up? Do you do any kind of testing, or how do you assess them?
Well, the conventional testing is usually the hydrolyzer breath test,
Right.
or you can also swallow a string and find to see what the pH is of the stomach.
Right.
But I don't go from that. I go more just from the clinical picture.
Okay.
And usually in the clinical picture there will be a symptom like, I call it like a tight, tickly cough, a spasmodic cough, a cough that you feel right here usually. frequent clearing of the throat, belching, and usually there's fatigue involved because if the stomach isn't working properly, you don't secrete the hydrochloric acid you need to break down proteins into amino acids to absorb them,
Right.
to repair all of your organs and structures, as well as you don't absorb iron and B12 well enough to make hemoglobin and carry oxygen. So usually if there's a tickly cough, usually worse at night, along with fatigue, I'll usually put a person on a stomach healing protocol anyway, because having a healthy stomach is I call it a cornerstone of health.
Right. What's a stomach healing protocol in your office?
Usually it's a temporary avoidance of histamine-forming foods.
Okay.
The worst one is red wine, fortunately. Red wine, coffee, white wine, cheese, chocolate, tomato, mango, pineapple, all of these foods, when you eat them, they form histamines, which do tend to irritate the stomach lining. So temporarily you avoid those, and then you take some stomach healing herbs and nutraceuticals, whether it's deglycerized licorice. There's different combinations of things that are made by the various supplement companies. One of my favorite ones is called Gastric Comfort by Ness. That's a very common one.
And what does that have in it?
It has some marshmallow, some mild digestive enzymes, and I'm pretty sure it has the DGL in there, the licorice. So that's like the stomach coating. It sort of heals and soothes the stomach lining. And then frequently there are microbes that are out of balance in the stomach. You've probably heard of Helicobacter pylori
Yes.
and Campylobacter.
Right.
So these bacteria love to go into the cells within the stomach called the parietal cells that form hydrochloric acid and kind of hang out there and suppress the acid formation. So you've got to clear those out, and it's been shown that antibiotics are not very effective. And some people argue that you need those bacteria in the stomach, but I haven't seen that to be the case clinically. But anyway, great way to wipe out those bacteria is there's a product I use called Interphase by Claire Labs, and it's
Right.
a specific enzyme that dissolves the biofilm,
Right.
or the armor, if you will, of these bacteria.
Right.
And then another nutraceutical, a special form of zinc called zinc carnosine, and that is cytotoxic to these bacteria. So once you take off their armor by dissolving their biofilm with that interphase enzyme, then you kill them with the zinc. And then it takes about 3 weeks to heal a stomach properly. I mean, there are other factors too. If the liver is clogged and not, peristalsing down as it ought to,
Right.
sometimes that puts a back pressure to the stomach, and you've got to clear that out and get that flowing properly too. And somewhere there within that combination, you can pretty much stop all reflux, stop the cough, heal the stomach lining, and get that important cornerstone functioning as it's meant to.
Interesting. Do you test for H. pylori? Do you do either the breath test or the stool test?
I don't. I pretty much can do energetic testing to find out if it looks like that person's going to need to do those 2 extra steps of the interphase and the zinc carnosine. It's not always, and a good number of people can heal their reflux just by avoiding the histamine-forming foods. Just taking a break from those for 3 weeks can stop the reflux, in its simplest treatment protocol.
Interesting. So do you find those bacteria are a common factor in this reflux?
It seems that about maybe a third to half the time you've got to do a little bit of the bacteria wiping out, but I think that probably doesn't line up with the conventional testing, like
Okay.
taking a biopsy or doing the string test and trying
Right.
to culture something or doing the breathalyzer. It probably doesn't correlate, but I sort of have a long history of treating this just by being able to perceive what's going on in the clinical picture.
Right. Do you use hydrochloric acid supplements as part of your protocol?
I know that it's recommended, even in functional medicine protocols, hydrochloric acid.
Right.
I have experimented with that a little bit, but it has not gone well, and typically I do use hydrochloric acid generally for people who are very mature, like people in their 70s or 80s, and I use a low potency one. I did try out what was recommended, but it seemed to be quite irritating to my patients, but then I, treat very hypersensitive people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You've heard the protocol where you keep increasing the dosage till
Until
it
you
gets burning.
feel over.
Yeah.
Do you use that?
I've used it, and sometimes you get patients that have bad reactions and they're not too happy.
Yeah, I'm a first do no harm kind of doc, so.
You know what? I've typically used digestive enzymes and a little bit of hydrochloric acid, so I'm kind of hedging my bets.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention that I will use, for people that it's indicated in, apple cider vinegar. So typically you gotta heal up the stomach a little while with those stomach soothers, DGL or what have you, and then you can start bringing in diluted apple cider vinegar, which will lower the pH of the stomach until their own hydrochloric acid production can kick in. And I think we left out the very different tact in functional medicine. Conventional medicine seeks to suppress the acid formation.
Right. Yes.
And functional medicine seeks to restore the acid formation, because I think through naturopathic medicine it's been observed that if there's adequate hydrochloric acid, then the stomach empties in a timely fashion. And if there's inadequate hydrochloric acid, then this food kind of sits there and ferments and it doesn't empty as it needs to, and then it kind of bubbles back up and you get the heartburn.
Right.
So it's a very different perspective on how to actually heal this, and I have found it to be very, very effective, over the case of my practice, over the years of my practice, and compared to the PPIs and the H2 blockers, which kind of undermine, because further suppressing the acid means you can't break down protein and you can't repair your body.
Right.
So over many years of use of this, I find it accelerates the aging process.
Right. I think from a functional medicine perspective, we found, and there's a fair amount of evidence for this, that rather than the body secreting too much acid, they're not properly digesting the food for a whole series of reasons, including not enough acid, not enough digestive enzymes, a series of other things that affect digestion, like stress, and the food works its way into the small intestine, and then it gets shoved back up all the way into the throat, acid and all, and then we conclude that there's too much acid, but the fact is the fact that the food's not getting broken down, and then, Jonathan Wright, did that research, and I guess there's some other research as well showing that most of these people don't have too much hydrochloric acid, and a percentage of them have too little.
Yeah, it's a known fact that as we mature, we make less and less hydrochloric acid because it's a very energy-intensive process.
Right. If we're stressed out and our body's using its energy maybe for other functions.
Yeah, and a lot of people do this thing, waking up in the morning and have coffee on empty, and I just feel like that's a formula for gastritis. For making the stomach lining vulnerable, and these bacteria like H. pylori and Helicobacter, they're airborne. So if somebody around you has it, and you guys are all laughing, or they're sneezing or coughing in your direction, and you've got gastritis from having coffee on empty and too much red wine or what have you, then you can inhale those bacteria and get an infection started. So.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Now, so you think that coffee is potentially problematic because of the histamine?
Histamine releasing.
Other people talk about coffee being acidic.
Yeah. I think it's the acidity of the coffee could be irritating too, but I think it's more the histamine releasing element of coffee, but it's probably both.
Right.
Usually it is.
Now, what do you think is accounting for the increase in U.S. society in the incidence? You think it's tied with obesity, or you think it's tied with dietary factors?
Well, I can see how it would be tied to obesity.
Right.
Because that little comment I made about if your liver's clogged, you get this back pressure, and the stomach doesn't empty on time. So usually if you have obesity, a fatty liver is another common symptom to have with it. But I kind of feel that it's our increasing levels of stress. So many of my patients are completely stressed out because of even just social media. They're just continually on their phone. They just don't even know how to take a moment to separate from it. So I really think we need to have times where we're on, social media vacations, we're fasting from these things so we can just come back to what real living is. I mean, people are so stressed out, and if you're living in a sympathetic state of being under stress, you're breathing up here all the time, and you're literally like pulling your stomach up too, and it's not able to relax and go through the parasympathetic digestive process. So I think that is probably a big contributing factor. And then frequent use of antibiotics disturb our whole microbiome, and that changes with how our genes are expressing, and there are many, I think, contributing factors with our modern society.
Do you have, what are your most effective strategies for helping your patients deal with the increased stress levels?
Well, I think when I just started informing them of how they can make small changes, like instead of having that coffee on empty, have your breakfast first and then have your coffee right after that. So it's not such a slam to your stomach. Things like stress management, even 5 minutes of meditation has been shown to really alter what's going on in the autonomic nervous system in the body. Encouraging them to take a break from media and technology, and also I'll do quite a lot of talking around getting an early bedtime, because lowering the stress hormones is very dependent on sleeping when it's dark. So I always say, try to start getting ready for bed at 9:30 at the latest, be in bed with the lights out by 10 o'clock. And then if you can sleep during those critical hours of 8 to 6 a.m., then that does a lot for your circadian rhythm and to lower the stress quotient on your body.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like most of my patients I talk to are sleeping less and less.
Yeah. So I just learned, people are just doing more and more, producing more and more, sleeping less and less. And I just learned an interesting tidbit I'll share with you from my course in functional neurology.
Oh, okay.
Which is
You're currently taking that?
Yeah, I'm currently doing it's a series of 21 modules, and I've just finished module 7.
And who are you doing this through?
That's through the International Association of Functional Neurology and Research.
Okay, and is this an online course, or are you going to?
You can do it online, but I go in person. I go down there and sit there in the room and listen to the presenters, because that way I can focus better on it.
Where is this being offered?
It's in Del Mar, California.
Okay.
So south of here. But we just did the module on the basal ganglia, direct and indirect pathways. And the basal ganglia are an important dopamine run system. They're the ones that give us motivation and interest and cause us to move and to go. But there's also the basal ganglia indirect pathway, which causes us to slow down, relax, and to stop. And back in my early training as a chiropractor, when we studied neurotransmitters, there's one called acetylcholine, which is a stimulatory neurotransmitter, right? It's involved with memory, it's excitatory. But acetylcholine excites the inhibitory basal ganglia, the indirect basal ganglia. So you need to have this stimulating neurotransmitter in order to calm down. So we all need to get some more choline in our diets, and the choline is best in shrimp and scallops. And so even in my own self, and I've been, I kind of extrapolated this out of functional neurology in my own self, and with my patients I've been recommending who don't have a shellfish sensitivity to have more shrimp and scallops, and I'm sleeping longer and better.
Really?
Mm-hmm. You gotta try it. Shrimp and scallops, yay! So that's another big stress management factor. It's amazing how I feel much more chilled out when I've got adequate choline.
Cool. So this has been an interesting talk. Why don't we try to maybe get a summary of what we talked about? So,
okay.
If we have a patient that comes to see you with reflux, what are
the steps?
Yeah, the steps.
Well, number one, avoid histamine foods,
right,
which we mentioned are wine, coffee, chocolate, tomatoes, cheese, and nitrites, mango, papaya. About 3 weeks avoiding those.
You said nitrites?
Yeah, nitrites and nitrates, which are
But those are green vegetables?
No, but the kinds that are used as preservatives in in deli meats. Yeah,
Okay.
You're right. So doing that is step number one. Step number 2, if you want to be more gently interventional, would be to take a stomach lining healer, like gastric comfort I mentioned, or deglycerized licorice, and then possibly doing interphase, which dissolves the biofilms.
And this is for H. pylori?
H. pylori and Campylobacter, and then possibly doing the zinc carnosine, which kills those bacteria once they've been stripped of their defenses. Making sure that there's good peristalsis, bowel transit, liver emptying would be step 3. And
How do you
how do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, there's a number of ways, but probably the simplest thing is just to add a magnesium supplement to your diet. I mean, the way that our food supply is anyways, we're bombarded with Roundup, and it's pulling the magnesium out of our diets, pulling it out of our bodies. So adding a magnesium supplement is good. Most of us are magnesium deficient, and that really helps the liver and the gallbladder to flow bile and get things moving.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's a simple way. Another thing you can do is you can drink a glass of hot water with half a lemon in the morning. You can take a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil at bedtime before you go to sleep.
What does drinking lemon water do?
It stimulates the liver and the gallbladder to release bile and to get flowing. And so does the olive oil at night. It's another stimulant to release bile and get flowing. So if you do that, I call those the mini liver flushes, for people. Didn't want her to beep. So we're fine. So then the other thing, another tool I employ is actually called a liver flush. That's an 18-hour process that you do at home, and you literally, structurally, physically clean the liver. And that's great for getting peristalsis going again and getting the stomach to empty on time.
Great.
So that would be step 3, and then step 4 is the stress management.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
going to bed on time, meditating, don't have coffee on empty.
It's amazing how many people have coffee in the afternoon and evening. It's incredible. I had no idea, but a large percentage of people drink coffee in the
all
evening.
day long.
Yeah.
Well, some people have the right enzymes in their liver that they clear it fast enough. But still, a lot of people who complain of not being able to sleep well do better having less coffee. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Great, Jeanette.
Yeah.
This was really interesting. So,
Good, Ben. I'm glad we get to talk about this.
for patients or practitioners who'd like to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, there's my website, which is getting redone right now, but it's drjeanetteryan.com, so DRJEANETTE, RYAN.com.
Okay.
And I think if you just Google that, it comes up, and then it's got my phone number and whatnot. But we're very close by each other
Yeah.
in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
So-
Same building.
Yes, we live different floor.
Just real quick on the website, are you gonna have one of those websites that scrolls down and scrolls down and scrolls down?
I think so. I mean, just, different topics, different tiles where you can pick subjects, There's an article I wrote a number of years back on there treating GERD, treating reflux.
Okay.
But I gotta go back and read it and see how I would update it by now. But yeah,
Okay, great.
it's under the Ask Dr. Ryan tab on the old
Okay.
website.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, Jeanette.
Thanks for having me, Ben. This was
Okay.
fun.
Yes, this was fun. We'll do it again sometime.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank